Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And today I would like to introduce a new angel to our collective family that we have going on here. This angel is relatively new. I only learned about this one maybe at the most a year and a half ago. And I actually learned it through a oracle deck first, and then I dug a little more into him and I was like, okay, this is actually kind of a cool angel. There's still a lot I don't know about him, but we'll go over some of the basics here and give you a little bit of insight as to where he works and what he does, and then you can reach out if you want to him and find out what else you can learn. I will continue to delve into him and find out as much more as I can, but this is kind of good intro for you. And the angel we're talking about is actually one of the Seraphim, which are the highest order of angels. They are the closest to the throne of God, Source Divine, the source of everything. So their image is a little intense when you start to work with them. Putting that out there, I've worked with a couple of different Seraphims over the years, and when they first introduce themselves, it is a little intimidating, and it's almost their presence that they bring with them is almost oppressive because it is so bright and so strong. They'll tone it down, but it's usually when you first contact them, it's a little intense. But the angel that I would like to talk about tonight is the Seraphim Bhokpi, Bhokpi, and I dug a little bit around. Diana Cooper tends to be the most active with a lot of his stuff, but there are some other sources out there as well, so we'll go with he's one of the newer angels, probably one of the newer channeled ones, which is great. We need more names, just means more we can talk about. So Bhokpi is the angel of birds. He's the overseer of birds of all forms, and I was a little surprised when I started finding this out about him, because I ran across him, like I said, through an oracle deck, and then the more I found out, the more he's attached to birds. The deck that really made me want to dig deeper, though, not just running across a name, is the Archangel Animals. Sorry. And this was the card that really caught my attention with it for some strange reason. And it was the owl with a dove. Like, why did this card catch my attention? As the more I've worked with this deck, the more familiar I've gotten with the different energies, but this one's listening to the messages from the angels. And so when you start to really tap into that, it's like, well, why would an owl be with a seraphim like Bhokpi? What would be the connection there? Well, because he is the patron, I guess you'd call it, of the birds, he is the overseer of the birds. And one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is if you happen to be someone who is a bird watcher, you have bird feeders, bird baths, you have little suet boxes all over the place. If you tend to have those around, you're basically inviting Bhokpi as a seraphim to come visit as well. If you ever see, when you're watching the birds, those little orbs, or you really start to fall into like a daydream listening to them chatter away and do their things, or you happen to hear a soft voice while you're observing, this is when Bhokpi tends to be a little more vocal with you, because you're literally speaking and looking at his creatures. This is his realm. These are his things. So it's actually a nice way to introduce or maybe even bring in that energy is to go somewhere where there's lots of birds and just kind of observe and listen to them. Bhokpi, by nature, because of all the birds and all the colors, doesn't have a specific color. A lot of the times I will look for a color, and that's how I work with the angels most frequently. But when I have tried to reach out to Bhokpi, there's not a specific color. It's almost like he's all colors and none all at the same time, so it's basically the purest form of white light. And because he is not tied to Earth, not an archangel so much as he is a seraphim, that puts him outside of the cardinal direction thing, so not associated with north, south, east, west, like a lot of the angels we've worked with before here. He is literally part of the celestial kingdom, so he doesn't associate in directions with our earthly realm, which that's fine. uh, this particular angelic being likes to use the birds to bring forth divine messages. This helps us connect to our higher realms and the higher frequencies and energies. So when we look at it from that perspective, and since he's also Seraphim, Bhokpi tends to work really close with Metatron, especially when it comes to we as humans working to uplift and spiritually grow and ascend. And if you've not heard of Metatron before, I have done previous videos about him, and I reference him a lot in different talks because he's one of the angels of ascension. He was the prophet Enoch, and he ascended to the angelic kingdom. And because of his purity, he was actually uplifted into this realm of the Seraphim. So he's a very powerful angel and definitely worth checking out. The easiest time, at least in my experience, and according to some of the stuff I found online as well, I like to see where the angels want to talk. There's some that are really morning people. There's others that are very much twilight. There's some that, like, if you're not talking to them at noon, they're probably not listening. Well, they are listening, but it's harder to communicate. And then there are a few of them that like to live in dark. Azrael is one of the first ones that comes to mind. And I think Raziel is the other one that likes to skulk around in the shadows. But this one in particular, Bhokpi, really likes to be in the daylight. And early mornings when the birds are just starting to chirp and tweet. I know you night owls probably don't like that, but you got night owls. He still talks to you. But when the birds really start to get active first thing in the morning and they're chirping and caterwauling and carrying on outside your windows, this is his message from God Source Divine to say, you made it through another night. You're ready for another day. All is well. Greet the day with joy and happiness. Usually that happens after a cup of coffee, but that's how it works. And when you really start to pay attention to the birds, and this is nature in general, you start to understand what your weather is going to be that day. If the birds are really bouncy and carrying on and laughing and joking and doing their chatteriness, this is actually a good sign for the day. It means that there's probably going to be a sunny day, might be a little wind, but it's not going to be cold and blustery. When it's really getting cold and blustery, you'll notice that the birds tend to find their little hidey holes, and they might come out and chirp a little bit, but it's not like when it's going to be a good day. It's a cacophony of little voices out there. And I'm sorry, I have bird feeders everywhere. I've even convinced my family, my mom and some other family members, to put bird feeders up, and now they are just as addicted to it as I am. So it's one of those things where birds tend to bring in a lot of joy just being able to sit and watch. Way better than TV. Lost my track. I lost my notes. If you're drawn to and really enjoy certain morning birds, like in the mornings, this is generally saying that you have been trying to reach out, or that Bhokpi has been influencing you without you really knowing it. And now that we're talking about it here, you can be a little bit more conscious of this angelic connection that is being opened up to you or offered to you. There's a couple of others, and it's weird because they don't show all of the birds, there's just a handful. But as I said, those night owls out there, or the ravens, with that one has Azrael and Bhokpi. And then you also have things like the eagle. So if you're a fan of the big eagles, and that's usually a sign that the Bhokpi might be coming around. And of course we have our doves, but there's a whole bunch of different birds that associate with Bhokpi, and there is a whole line of what each bird means and the spiritual connection. So it's definitely worth kind of getting a little bit more to know about with that one. Going into that part, I just 1 second, sorry. One of my favorite birds, and I didn't know about the meanings to these little I call them little monsters, but they are so much more than that. They're beautiful little birds, and that is for me, chickadees. I love those little things. They're about that big, little black caps on them. They strut around like little peacocks, and it's like, you weigh less than a ping pong ball, calm down. But they are something that's always caught my attention. I can usually pick them out of a crowd of birds, and I will look until I find the chickadee because they're one of my favorite birds for little guys especially. And I've always been curious as to what they mean because they make me happy, but it's usually because of their attitude. They're amazing little birds. But I did a little digging, a little poking around. Birds actually are representative, chickadees in particular, of joy and happiness. They're also calling you to remember the happiest memories and look forward for what's coming positively in the future. They're also a symbol of new horizons, new endeavors, things improving in your life. They are also good reminders that, they can adapt to anywhere. I've seen them in cities, I've seen them in the country. They're literally everywhere if you start paying attention to them. They are interesting little birds because, and this is the reason I call them my little peacocks when I see them strutting around, because they do. They're these little dinky things that are literally probably that big. And they strut and they carry on and they bounce and they scream, and they are amazing little dudes. But they don't realize how small they are. They think that they're big. So it's a good way to kind of remember our own confidence and our own abilities. I have seen chickadees, and this is not a joke. I have many other people who, when they start to really pay attention to them, are confused. Because this little dinky thing will go after, like, magpies. They will go after crows. I've seen them chase red-winged blackbirds. They don't understand that they're only little. They think that they're hawks in their little minds. So you better listen when they get in the way. And it's also a little bit of a reminder to us when we start to pay attention to them that your size does not specify your value. Your size does not show your strength. And that's the message that I kind of pick up a little bit of the joy and happiness part, but it's also tying into with the chickadees. For me, it doesn't matter how big or small you really are. It's what can you do where you're at. And that's something that I feel like with Bhokpi, because I've always been drawn to the Seraphim anyway, this is a message that can be worked for me, but also any of you guys who are listening, if you're feeling drawn to chickadees, and I don't have any good pictures, unfortunately. I could have went online, but I have pictures somewhere. I just don't know what memory card they're on. And yeah, I'm old school, so that's where those are at. But they are just the most beautiful little warrior birds, and that is one of those things that Bhokpi would be working with in that energy, is knowing what these birds symbolize. There's always something better. There's always going to be a better day. There's a reason to be joyful, and don't let anyone else tell you how to live your life when it comes to your spiritual journey, what you're finding for joy and happiness. As long as you're not harming other people, do your thing. Like that's the key that I usually get from especially chickadees. But back to Bhokpi. Bhokpi is also associated with the ancient cultures of Lemuria and Atlantis. He is said to be one of the angels that guided those lost civilizations and is actually helping to uplift humanity back into those frequencies so we can actually rediscover what it means to be a Lemurian or an Atlantean. The Seraphim as a whole, because of their very high vibration, their very high level of energy within the choirs, and their closeness to God's source divine, they are here to help uplift humanity. As I said, Metatron, and there's a few other ones we've talked about so far. And when humanity is at its darkest points, these angels are not really accessible to us. We don't have the vibrational understanding. We are so far in the dark that the concept of a seraphim, the fiery ones, is so far beyond us. Don't even try. Literally, at those points in our history, there was no way we could have reached that because our minds weren't prepared for it. We were not in the mental state to hold that image or even be able to accept that frequency that existed. Humanity wasn't there. Like looking back at the last 2,000 to 4,000 years, we were in the very roots of the Kali Yuga, which that's a whole different thing, but we're coming out of that. We're moving into a period of enlightenment, and by leaving that, we're elevating and the Seraphim are part of this crowd that's helping us lift our vibration. They're helping us see there is so much more to life than the drudgery, the day-to-day, that heavy aspect of our existence. We're more than that, and that's where we're headed. So even when the things are feeling so dark, our planet, the core of Gaia herself, is starting to resonate at a higher frequency. There's a whole shift of energy that's occurring, and this is actually resonating out, and it's inspiring a lot of us as spiritual seekers, those of us who are looking for other things and brightening our own bubbles. We are spreading light. We are helping these angels anchor this higher frequency energy into the planet. We are here and being called to bring about a new revealing of light. We are here to bring a new revealing of consciousness. Seraphim Bhokpi, Seraphim Metatron, there's a whole list of them. They are working more and more frequently into our world because it is time for us as humanity to take those steps into this higher frequency. And this is where angels like Bhokpi are so important. And that's why the bird aspect of it, the birds are everywhere, meaning the messages from Source God Divine are everywhere. And that is what Bhokpi is doing. He is disseminating and spreading out the message from God Source Divine, and it's helping us through these sometimes little chirping birds, sometimes it's the clucking of the hens out in the field, sometimes it's the scream of a peacock, if you know, you know, out there in the field carrying on. But they're always something that's catching your attention, reminding you that there's more. So when you are starting to notice this energy from Bhokpi, where you're becoming more aware of what all this may mean, it also is saying it's time to look at things from a higher perspective. Let's go back to our eagle card here. Where'd it go? There it is. And when I say that, we're looking at this energy from a higher perspective. The eagle doesn't care what's going on. They're above it. You are looking at things when you work with Archangel Bhokpi, you're picking things up from the higher perspective. Whether it's in the daylight or in the dark, you're looking at things from the higher perspective, and this allows you to see a clear path. You can avoid dangers or pitfalls along the path, and sometimes you don't get to see all of it. Those things that are stumbling blocks in our path in some ways are there to help us grow and help us realize that we don't get to know everything. It would be nice, but we don't. And that's what's coming through when the pitfalls occur, even though we thought we could see the path. Probably that was a necessary pitfall to either A, slow us down, catch our ego before it got out of control, or help us avoid something bigger down the road. Just because there's a hiccup on a spiritual journey does not mean you failed. It means there's more going on that you may not be aware of. And this is where understanding the frequencies from the Seraphim, especially Bhokpi in this situation, because that's who we're talking about, is a good way for us to start to understand why things happen like they do. We may never figure all of it out, but a lot of times you'll figure it out shortly thereafter, especially when it's a stumbling block. You're like, well, I dodged this cliff over here, and I tripped over this branch. Yeah, you tripped over the branch, because if you wouldn't have, you would have just been along and fallen off of another cliff. You tripped on the branch to recorrect your path. So it's things like that that are super important in that respect. And when we start to work with Archangel Bhokpi, we're tapping into an energy similar to air. I won't say it's the same because air has a direction, and that's not what we're doing. When we talk about the Seraphim, they don't associate with our normal elements either. But what we're talking in this aspect is air and water have a similar trait, and that is they go with the flow. There's riding winds and currents like you ride waves. It's not about working at it. It's not struggle. You don't have to fight against these things. The air moves whether you're paying attention or not. The water moves whether you're paying attention or not. And if you've ever done parachuting or hang gliding or any of that kind of stuff, you have some control, but it's not a lot of effort in most cases to move. If you've ever been on a river and you've been riding the like whitewater rafting or anything, during the times when the water feels kind of calm and the boat's just moving, you don't have to row. You'll still move. You just don't like go with the flow. And this is what Bhokpi's energy is, looking at things from the higher perspective, understanding what that means. Like, how does this play out for you? When you're in that state, your ego's out of the way, which is nice, but also allows you to see what is the path, and then the obvious next steps. When you're not in that higher atmosphere, you just take those, and it's with ease. Like, this is the next logical thing. This is what I'm supposed to do. So it's a little bit easier in that respect. And as you're doing that, you're able to move forward in confidence. You're moving forward in peace. You're not forgetting your past, but you're no longer focusing in that direction. Ego doesn't look behind itself, it looks forward. And that's what Bhokpi's wanting to encourage, is the past is how you got here. It's good to remember it, but quit looking back there. You're not going that way anymore. You're going forward. So your focus is the future. Your focus is moving forward. Bhokpi tends to show up in our lives when, whether we like what's being said or not, we need to hear from God's source divine. And that's not always a good thing, because sometimes the truth that comes forward may not be what we want to hear. And I want to repeat this. The truth that comes forward may not be what we want to hear, but it is what we need to hear. You don't want to hear no, but sometimes you need to hear no. That direction is not a good direction. This is a better choice. That direction leads to sadness and pain. This is a better choice. This is a call from this divine when Bhokpi is really wanting to get your attention, snap, snap. He's saying, we want to show you peace. God Source Divine is saying, slow down, pause, listen. We have one of these, and yet we all use it way too much. We don't use these as much as we should. And that's what Bhokpi wants to bring forward, is pause and listen. This is when you start to pause, you really start to pay attention. Bhokpi is coming in, wings spread, going, thank you. This is what you need to hear. Need to hear. It's not what you want to hear. It's what you need to hear. Sometimes those truths can be a little rough. But if it's what is going to help you grow spiritually, then it was necessary. And sometimes you need to hear it, even if you don't want to, because that's overcoming that ego. It's stepping into that more spiritual place, and that's what Bhokpi is bringing forward. Bhokpi can also bring in an energy of removing obstacles. And if you've ever worked with the Hindu deity Ganesha, the elephant-headed one, he's all about breaking down obstacles and removing blocks and things like that. That's really what we're working with when we work with Bhokpi. It's just in a Seraphim level versus deity level. And he can also bring in that high vibrational light to help you see and clear out the blocks, kind of like laser focus, which is cool. This is allowing you to step into your self-confidence, maybe even give you the boost in life that you can step into, that instead of sitting there going, I just want more adventure in my life. Why can't I be like that person? But what are you doing to step into that life? Yeah, reading about the adventures of other people is great, but what are you doing about it? Are you willing to take the risks? Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're minor, but are you willing to take the risks to do that? And that's where Bhokpi can come in and be like, this is what you're looking at. Are you willing to take those steps? If not, here's another alternative. The angels don't usually slam doors in your face. If this one doesn't work for you, they will generally have another option, and Bhokpi is no different in that respect. The other thing, and this will be kind of where I'll leave it off for today, Bhokpi also likes to help you when you are going through or making big changes in life. Sometimes those changes, if you're a young person watching this, as you're going through puberty, your body is making changes. You really don't have a lot of control over it. And this can be a time of really strong need for adaptation. And Bhokpi can help you understand what's going on and how this flow is occurring. It could be a new job, which are always fun, but it's a way for you to adapt better and go with the flow within the system and get into that state where, okay, now I understand this. And you can still look at your history and be like, okay, this is where I was, this is what I learned, but you're not living there. You're taking a glance back because you're moving forward. You know, your rearview mirror in your car, it's small because you're only taking a glance back there. You're going that direction. That's your windshield. So, as you're doing that, it's like new houses, new jobs. It could be a new town, a new state. You could be out of your environment altogether. Like, I live in the Rocky Mountains. You want to talk about change? I have family that live back east on the East Coast in that area. When you go that direction, it's all flat. It is not something I'm comfortable with. But could I make that adaptation if I needed to? Yes. And would I reach out to Bhokpi? Oh yeah. I like my mountains. But it's things like this that you can use this energy to help you adapt to these changing elements of life. And you can literally use Bhokpi for any major change that you're dealing with to help you adapt, help you grow through the process, and help you see a much brighter future. So, when that kind of change is going on, the other thing that you can use Bhokpi to help encourage with is, if you ever get those feelings like you just don't belong, like you moved to a new town, you're in a new job, you just don't fit in, you feel awkward, you feel like everyone's staring at you, FYI, they're probably not, but that's how our egos like to play. Bhokpi can actually help you find your niche, find your group of weirdos, find the people who resonate with you. He helps you realize, in some cases, you actually do fit in. You were doubting yourself. You thought because you were the new guy that everyone was judging you. They might have been, but you know what they were judging? Your actions, not you as a person. Rarely do they do that, and if they do, think of mean girls in high school, and I'm not kidding. 90% of those people, they're just little meh, 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 meh. Think of them as like hens over there pecking at the grain. You can hear them, but you don't have to go deal with them. And Bhokpi can actually help you understand who your group is, which is sometimes a little bit harder to figure out than if you fit in or not. But figuring out what your group is, where do you fit in this situation, and then you find your niche. And when you get into that spot, you're like, this is who these are my people. This is my tribe. Bhokpi can help you understand that. Some people are lone wolves. They just don't fit very well anywhere, but you can still adapt to a situation and fit in to the environment you're in. And that's where you start getting into that chameleon aspect, which is kind of handy at times, but it is what it is. This is just how things go. But Bhokpi is an angel that I personally, like I said, I've only been around working with for a year and a half, something like that. And the more I learn, the more interested I get. So I personally am going to continue working with this frequency of angel because I want to understand it better. If you guys and gals have ever worked with Bhokpi, I would be more than excited to hear what you have to say or think in the comment section down below. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you enjoy this type of content. If you have other angel suggestions that you are curious about or maybe you've heard of and you want to dig a little deeper, feel free, drop those in the comment section as well. I'm always looking for new information and new energies to look into. So with that, I will let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.